Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a best-selling author, the storytelling expert, Kendra Ho!
But I'm feeling all in. Are you feeling all in? Yes, as you heard in my introduction, my name is Kendra Hall, and yes, I am a storytelling expert, and as you probably know, stories are the most important tool, the most important skill you can have in this business, and I discovered the power of story at a very young age. I was 11 years old when I told my very first story. I was in my last year of elementary school, and I have to tell you, it was not a good year for me. How many of you had kind of a tough time at about 11, 12 years old, right? It's an awkward time. And I think part of the reason is because it's one of the first times that we start wondering, who am I? What do I bring to this world? Now, there were a couple other reasons this year was difficult for me. Number one, I was recovering from a very bad haircut. Yeah, did any of you have bad haircuts? Right, my mom, here's what happened. My mom, I had this beautiful, long, flowing hair. My mom, I think she was tired of brushing it and me screaming at her about it, so she decided to cut it all off. A nice little pixie haircut. Now the problem is, when you're 11 years old, the only way that people knew I was a girl was because of my long hair, so I had a very embarrassing summer that year. It was awkward. And the other reason 5th grade was such a difficult year for me, that 11 years old, is because I had this best friend who seemed to have it all figured out. She was perfect. Have any of you had a perfect best friend? Exactly, right? Here's the thing. First of all, she was absolutely beautiful. She had this long blonde hair, the operative word being long, there, and these big brown eyes that would turn green when she needed them to. You would be looking at her, and all of a sudden, yes, her eyes would turn green. It was magical, and all of the teachers loved her because she was smart and she was engaged, and the girls loved her because she was kind and loyal, and the boys. Let me tell you, if a boy could go into a tattoo parlor and have a name tattooed across their arm, they all would have had her name, because even her name was perfect. Ready? Molly. It is the quintessential 11-year-old girl name. All right, let me just, as far as Americans go, like, Molly was it. All right, and I remember walking down our long elementary school hallways, side by side with my best friend Molly and the principal. The most powerful man in the school would approach us, and every single time he would see us walking, he would stop, and he would look at Molly, and he would do this thing with his hands on his hips. He would go, "Hey, Molly, Molly!" Looking back, a little inappropriate. Okay, right? Yeah, not the, "Hey, Molly, Molly." And then he would just keep on walking, like I wasn't even there. And I remember I was so desperate to stand out, to make my difference, to have my voice be heard. 3rd, and then at the very end of that school year, I got my chance. We had a lesson in my English class about storytelling. We were each to choose a children's book to take it into one of the younger level classrooms and read the book to the 7 and 8-year-olds. I chose the book, The Giant's Big Toe. It's a classic. Did not do much for my popularity. It's kind of an awkward title if you think about it. And I remember holding on to this book and thinking, maybe I could do something with this. Add a little bit of details, add some emotion to the story. And then I walked in to read my story to a room full of 7 and 8-year-olds. And it was right at the end of the school day, and it was pure chaos in the classroom. Kids were bouncing off the walls, picking bugs off each other. The teacher had completely given up. She just wanted the children all to go home. And I remember standing there with my book and thinking, no one is going to pay attention to this. So I decided to close the book, set the book down, and just tell the story. And within those first few sentences, I held those little kids in the palm of my hand. Oh yes. And I'll admit, I kind of liked power, right? Like I knew that if I wanted to, I could make them laugh, I could make them cry, I could make them feel, and I knew in that moment that maybe the answer, the solution I have been looking for to have my voice be heard, to go all in on who I was simply to share more stories. Now I didn't go back to 5th grade, okay? My name was in lights. I was on tour all over the school. Kendra is the Giant's Big Toe, which that was awkward as well, because who wants to be a big toe? And I remember on the very last day of school, walking side by side with my best friend Molly down those wide elementary school hallways, and we passed the principal, the most powerful man in the school, and again, he stopped, he looked at us, he did his weird like, hey, Molly, thing, because he couldn't help himself, it was a sickness, but then he turned to me, and he said, Kendra, I heard you've been telling some great stories, keep it up, and so I did, and now, I'm here. It can be done through the stories you tell, and the good news is, these are stories you already have. You just need to know why and how to tell them. That is what we're talking about here today. Are you excited or what? Yeah! Good. The good news is, you don't even have to be excited, okay? I have enough excitement for the possibility of your stories to go around, all right? So here's how the rest of our time together is going to break down. First, in order for you to harness the power of your stories, to go all in on your stories, it's really important that you understand a little bit about why storytelling works so well, why it is worth the investment of your time and energy. From there, we're going to move into what I like to call a story clarification. Because how many of you, let me just take an informal poll here in this room, how many of you, before sitting in this room here today, have heard about the importance of telling stories? Yes, raise your hands, let me hear yes. Look at this, it's like, it's all over the room, here we go, right? Of course you know how important your stories are, and yet, storytelling has become a bit of a buzzword, which means we often think we're telling a story, but we aren't. So I have a before and after case study I want to show you so you can set your story straight. And then finally, I want to leave you today with some very specific storytelling strategies. The stories that you need to find how to put them together so you can start maximizing this room here today. All right, so let's get to work. First, why does a storytelling work so well? Why is this a skill worth your investment? Well, it starts here. Number one, storytelling has the innate and extremely important ability to illustrate the value of something, the true value, in a way that no other information, logic, data, science can do. Humans make decisions about the value of something, whether it's a product or an opportunity or a company. We make that decision first based on our feelings, and then we justify that decision with logic. How do you make someone feel something? You tell them a story. In fact, anthropologists wanted to put this to the test. They did an anthropological, sorry about that, I can't even say that word, so no words, it doesn't translate well. But they did an experiment. They wanted to see, what do people buy? Do they buy the thing, the product, the item, the object, or do they buy the story of what that thing will mean in someone's life? So here's what they did. They gathered 200 objects, and they spent a total of $250 US. So just little knickknacks. They weren't technically worth anything, very low value. But then they took each one of those objects and put them up on the website eBay. Now, eBay is a social marketplace where you can sell items. You put those items up there, and then people decide how much they want to pay for it. They can bid more and more and more, so the price goes up. So they wanted to see, what do people buy? Do they buy the thing, or do they buy the story of the thing, and how much will someone pay for it? So for each one of the objects, they put it on eBay with a story. Here were the results. Well, let me give you one example. First, if you look at the screen there, you can see that that is a used pink horse toy. Okay, can you all see it clearly from the 80s? This was a very fashionable outfit in the 80s in the US. Very big hair, silver hoops. Now, can we all agree, just for a moment here, that things from the 80s are not vintage? Can we agree on that? Yes? This is not a vintage horse. This is just an old toy, and they only spent $1. It's worth very little. They put this horse up on eBay with a story. Now, the story was of a woman who had recently dropped her daughter off at university. Her daughter had moved on to a new phase in her life. The mother was heartbroken, came back to her home after her daughter had gone away and started going through some of her daughter's things. And she came across this pink horse and remembered how her daughter used to trot it across the windowsill. It would be the first thing the mother saw every day coming home from work, because her daughter would be there with the horse, waiting for her mother to come home. And the mother hoped that whoever purchased this horse would use it as a reminder that though the days can feel long, the years are oh so short. Good story, right? Sentimental story, okay? Someone purchased this horse for $104.50. That's American dollars. The difference there is outrageous, right? Think about that. That horse is not worth that much, but what did the person buy? Did they buy the toy, or did they buy the story? We buy the story. Anytime we're trying to communicate the value of one of the new skin products, or the value of this incredible opportunity or community, if you try to explain it with logic and details and science, you're only getting part of the message. You want someone to feel what is available to them, and in order to do that, you have to share a story. The last reason, actually, let me show this to you. It wouldn't be very fair of me. Remember they spent $250 on those objects? They made $8,000. That is a 3,100% increase on their efforts. How many of you have some big goals in this room? I want to see you show of hands. Who has big goals in this room? Big goals, big goals, big goals. Imagine the difference if you were to shift your perspective and start telling more stories, how much better you'd be at communicating the value of what you have here at Newskish. All right, the last reason stories are worth the investment of your time and energy is this. Stories are the thing that stick. Stories are what we remember. And there's a reason for this. Storytelling has a leveraging point that no other form of information exchange has, or communication exchange has, and it is this. The storytelling process is by default a co-creative one. Okay, as I am telling you my story, you are creating your own version of that story in your mind. You're adding my words, you're taking my words, yes, but you're adding your own images, your own feelings, your own lived experience. And because you are an active participant in the creation of that story, it will stay with you longer. Let me ask you, how many of you, when I was telling you the story of my elementary school best friend Molly, we're picturing the best friends, the best childhood friends you have. How many of you could see their faces? Let me see your hands, right? You could picture them. Or when I was talking about my elementary school and walking down those long hallways, how many of you pictured your primary schools that you grew up going to? Let me see. I want to see. Yes, were you walking those hallways? Okay, I see them. You're raising your hands, you're nodding your heads because I know what I'm doing up here. I know that by default, this is how stories work. Anytime you tell a story, the person you're telling it to will meet you halfway. And because of that, your stories will be remembered. Rudyard Kipling said it, if history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. I know that each and every one of you are here to leave your legacy, to have your voice be heard, to make an impact on the world through Nu Skin and everything that you have to offer here. If you want to be remembered, be telling your stories. Okay, so there are just a few of the reasons why storytelling is worth the investment of your time and energy as a skill. However, we need to now establish a little bit of storytelling clarification so that you know what a story is and what a story isn't, so you make sure to seize every one of the story opportunities that are available to you. So let's start first with a few of the things that a story is not. Okay, first of all, a story is not a list of ingredients and or their benefits. Now, I know at Nu Skin, you use only the best ingredients. They create so many incredible benefits, but each one of those ingredients, just saying the name of what it is, isn't going to start that co-creative process. We don't feel when we hear the name of an ingredient, we start to feel when we hear the story of what that can mean in our life. A story is not simply explaining how the science works. Now again, the exquisite science of Nu Skin, there is unparalleled. There isn't anything like it anywhere in the world. However, if you start going into scientist mode, you're completely relying instead of allowing them to start that co-creative process or to visualize and to picture what that science can mean in their lives. And finally, it's not high-level passions or statements, or let me ask you this. How many of you are passionate about your new skip business? Yes? Let me hear it. How many of you are passionate? Yeah. I can feel the passion. I can see the passion. I love it here. How many of you, but let me just say, what is the least passionate way to express your passion about something? Is to simply say, I am so passionate. Right? You can't. I am very passionate. You can even say it with a smile, I'm so passionate. But what is the story of that passion? Or here's another question for you. How many of you engaged as one of the reasons that you're here, one of the reasons that you decided to become an entrepreneur and everything that means is to have a little bit more time, freedom, and flexibility, maybe with your families. Let me hear, is that anybody's why in here? Yes, of course it is. Yes, I see you out there. Yes. All right, so let me share a story with you of a woman I was working with, and the whole reason she started a business, just like yours, was for that freedom to be able to spend her time with her children as she wanted. So here's her story. It was many years ago now. At her children's school, there was a very special day called Author Day, where all of the kids and all of the teachers would get all dressed up in costumes of their favorite authors or favorite book characters, and there would be a whole parade through the hallways of the school. It was such a big deal. And the mother, every year, would dress her kids up in their Author Day costumes. She would drop them off at school, and then she would drive to work. She would go to her job. And at about noon, her phone would start dinging, and on her phone would be photos of her kids at the Author Day parade. Photos that someone else had to take because she did not have time freedom with the job she was in. And it broke her heart. And eventually she decided that she needed that freedom. She wanted that freedom. She doubled down on her business, on building a business like this, reaching out to people, following the system, sharing the stories. And 1 year later, on Author Day, she dressed her kids up in their Author Day costumes. She dropped them off at school, and yes, at noon, her phone was filled with photos of her kids at Author Day. Photos that she was there to take herself. Right? Yes, you can applaud that woman. Isn't that an incredible story about what this business makes available, that flexibility? And when I asked her why for engaging in a business like this, she said, I want more time freedom with my family. And I asked her again, and I said, why? What's your why? Why do you do this? And she said, I want more time freedom with my family. Doesn't the story make that statement feel completely different? You have these stories, these moments in your life that if you choose to start sharing them, they can change everything. So now let's talk for a moment about what a story actually is, and what a story has, what makes a story. First, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now I'm going to admit that doesn't help you very much. We'll talk more about that in just a bit. There are emotions in a story. You share that in the story so that other people feel and can join you in that story. A story happens in a moment. We'll talk more about that in a bit as well. And finally, there are characters to care about and something at stake. How many of you have worked with some characters in your new skit experience? Yes? Don't point to your neighbor. I see all those characters sitting out there. Yeah, I see each one of your customers, the people on your team. Those are all stories that can be told. Now, I know that showing you two side-by-side slides of what a story is and what it isn't doesn't help you very much. So what I'd like to do for you now is play for you a before and an after case study of a brand, a person, an entrepreneur just like you, who thought she was telling a story. And then what happened when she actually did. Now you can see by the photo up there on the screen that this company, it's called Soul Carrier. It's a purse company, okay? It has nothing to do with what you do. But let me ask you, how many of you use a video to share about Nu Skin? Do you use videos? Yeah, you use videos on social media, you use videos to, okay, great. So this is the video that she used to tell her story. I hope you can tell, yeah, by the large air quotes, that she does not tell a story, but I want you to watch this video, and afterwards, we'll talk about it. Let's roll the tape.
What does a journey collection mean? It means I'm being who I was born to be. I'm creating and I'm designing and I'm living my dreams. And this is the ripple effect of just finally getting to the place of doing what I so passionately love and want to be. A lot of people view me as the girl who lost my parents in college, and I was a girl that was supposed to carry on Paisan and Joyce's legacy, but deep down, I want to be me. I want to be Jennifer Page. I want people to look at me and be like, she listened to her own intuition, she listened to her heart, and she followed her dreams. Soul Carrier is a fashion brand and it designs handbags, but it's so much more than that. I want it to be about encouraging young people to be who they are, to follow their dreams, and to not get swept up in the white noise, but to know that if there's something what they want to do, to go after it and do it with all their heart and all their passion. If you're doing what you're meant to do, you will get there.
All right, yeah. It was a lovely video, wasn't it? Right? And doesn't even some of the things that she was talking about, doesn't it sound familiar? Pursue your passion. Follow your dreams. These are all things that you talk about. You do those things through Nu Skin. She does those things through purses. And what we got here was what we have is a pretty good video. But remember, she did not tell a story. In fact, this is the biggest mistake that happens when it comes to storytelling in business in general, not just here at Nu Skin. Are you ready for it? We allude to the story, but we don't actually tell it. We mention that there's a story there, but we don't tell the story. Instead, we just talk about being passionate. We talk about following your dreams. Let me ask you, who in here heard what the story might have been? Did you hear her say it? Right? Raise your hands if you heard her say it. That she lost her parents in college. How many of you heard her say that? Yeah, I see it, right? And even when she said that, didn't your brain go like this? I'm about to hear a story. Because you're a human, and humans want to hear stories. This is what we're programmed to. This is what we're programmed for. And yet, she kept going. You kept going. No one was the wiser for it. And what we got was a pretty good video about following your dreams. The question is, how differently would you feel about the product, about the company, about the person? Because keep in mind, when people say yes or no, but when they say yes to Nu Skin, they're also deciding whether or not to say yes to you. They connect to your story, but only if you decide to tell it. So, I wonder how differently you would feel about this first company if she told the story. Good news. You don't have to wonder how differently you would feel. We have an after video. So I got together with Jen, and it turns out this moment with her parents really was a catalyst for her. When her life went in a completely different direction, I want you to watch this video and see if you can tell the difference telling the story makes. Let's roll the tape.
Suppose my story starts like anyone else's. My parents wanted what was best for me and not to have to experience the struggles that they did. So I pursued a business degree, and then afterwards I planned to pursue law school. Then when I was 21, my life changed. I woke to find myself hanging upside down by my seatbelt. My family's SUV had flipped over several times, hitting the base of a concrete billboard before coming to a stop. Both my parents were taken from me that day. My mom was killed instantly, and my dad died hours later in the hospital. I knew that saying goodbye to two people I loved would be hard, but what I wasn't expecting was how hard the aftermath would be. Everyone was wondering what I would become in light of this tragedy. There was a lot of pressure, scrutiny, a lot of noise. I'll never forget the last words my mother said to me. She was sitting in the passenger seat in the car, and seconds before the accident happened, she turned around and she said to me, "Where do you want to go?" The next moment was chaos, and she never even got to finish that sentence. But her voice, that question, "Where do you want to go?" is forever frozen in my memory. I decided the best way to honor my parents is to find the answer that worked for me, for Jennifer Page, not for anyone else. Soul Carrier is the manifestation of that. Every handbag I design is created to serve as a daily reminder, to ignite people to do what they're meant to do. I don't know where to be when someone asks you that question, where do you want to go? Or if you will have to ask it of yourself. But when that day comes, I hope that Soul Carrier can be a reminder to tune out the noise and to choose the path you were meant for.
So let me ask you, could you tell the difference?
Yes.
Yes. Like, isn't it shocking? Isn't it, isn't it incredible to think that she ever didn't tell that story? Aren't you shocked? Doesn't it mean that something completely different to you now? Doesn't the name Soul Carrier mean that something different to you now? Doesn't the purse, which is just product, but now with the story, it means more to you? Don't you feel more for Jen, the entrepreneur who is sharing this product? Yes, all because she shared her story. The difference is profound. This is the kind of difference you can make. However, before we get into how to be crafting your stories, there are two people I need to speak to in this room here today. And you'll know who you are. The first person is the person who watched that video and thought to themselves, I have a story like that. I have a story that is that hard, a challenge that felt that big or impossible, and I'm not sure if I should tell that story. To you I say, your story of struggle could be the exact story that someone needs to hear to get through their own struggle. Don't be afraid to share that story because it could change someone else's life. The second person I need to talk to in this room here today is the person who watched that video or who has heard any of the stories that come up on the Nu Skin stage, these big, beautiful, powerful stories, and you've thought to yourself, I do not have a story that big. My life has been more or less pretty smooth, okay? There have been no big mountains, no big valleys. Who would ever want to hear my story? It's so small. It's so insignificant. Maybe I shouldn't tell it at all. And to you, I want to say, it is not the magnitude of a story that makes a difference. It is your decision to tell a story, even a story of a small struggle, a small realization, of a day that just went kind of bad, or a triumph that you were a little excited about. All of these stories, all of your stories, have value. And I hope you tell them. Okay, let's get to the good part. Right here is where I want to leave you today with some very specific strategies so that you can start telling more stories, better stories, more compelling stories in your Nu Skin work to your teams, to future customers, current customers. Here's how it works. The storytelling process. Now, I go more in depth in all of this in my books, The Stories That Stick. Also, I did put the Chinese cover up there. You know, you can order these all over the world, so go ahead and get your copies. So we'll dive deep. We'll talk about it here now, but you can dive deeper into this in the future. Here is the storytelling process. It really breaks down into 3 separate parts. First, you have to find your stories, then you have to craft them in a compelling way, and then you get to tell them. Let's start here with finding your stories. There are 3 essential stories that you need to find when it comes to your work here with Nu Skin. You need your product story, you need your success story, and you need your Nu Skin story. So let's talk about each one of these separately, all right? I want to give you some prompts that you can use to help find those moments. You're really looking for moments in your Nu Skin experience to unlock these stories that are within you. So here are a few of the unlock prompts you can use to find your product story. First, choose one product you love. I know, you love all the products, okay? I know you do. I love them too. I've got them up in I have the little travel size of the cleansing gel at the hotel room, and every time I squeeze it on my hand and I put it on my face, I'm gonna look so beautiful after I'm done watching my hair without even needing to. I told you a story. Now you can think of me every day, like, I'm gonna look so beautiful after this. But you have to choose one, okay? I want you to choose one product that you love, and here are some of the prompts you can use to unlock the stories. Think about the first time you ever tried it. I remember there was a Nu Skin product that I tried many, many years ago. It was a gift for me. And I think at the time it was called Ice Dancer. It's the foot cream that's like really cold. Anyway, I put it on. I was pregnant, so my feet were really big. So were my ankles. So was everything, honestly. It was just all very, very big. And I put that Ice Dancer cream on my foot, and it was so cold and so wonderful that I hid the product from my husband. I didn't want him to use it because I knew he would love it too and use it all up. That was the very first time I tried it. I could tell a whole story about how much I loved that one product from the first time I tried it. A story of the product in action. This is a story from a little bit later on where all of a sudden you looked in the mirror and thought, I look completely different, or you felt completely different. Think of one moment where you realize that the product has made you feel different than you did before. Maybe you were standing in your kitchen. Maybe you were with your friends, but there was a moment where you thought, this is the product in action. Finally, you can tell the story of someone else who loved that product. How many of you have heard some pretty inspiring product stories, either at this event or previous Nu Skin events? Let me hear it. Yes, I know, there are so many inspiring stories. You are able to tell someone else's story to start that co-creative process. Okay, so there are a few options for your product story. Next, your success story. Here's a place that you can look for it. What's one of the things in your life that have been made possible by engaging in this business? And it can be a small thing. I had a woman who was so excited because her husband, whenever she would buy gifts for her husband, she loved buying him gifts, but she always knew that she was buying them with his money. And then she started in a business like this, and she was able to buy him just a small little thing, but it was money that she had earned from her work in this business, and it felt so good to her. That is a success story that she can tell. Tell the success story of someone else who has inspired you. How many of you have been inspired by someone sitting in this room here today? Yes. You've heard their story. You've said that means something to me. This is what this is all about. You can tell their story. Finally, your Nu Skin story. This is an incredible company. I've been all over the world. I've worked with many companies, and there is no place like Nu Skin. You need to be telling your story of this incredible company. Maybe it was the story of the first time you came to a Nu Skin event. Who is here at this event, your very first event that you've ever been to with Nu Skin? Raise your hand. Let me hear it. Yes, let's give them a round of applause, our first timers. Yes. Right here, right now, in this room. Remember this moment and tell this story. How many of you have ever had a moment where you felt so proud of this company? Maybe it's the philanthropic work that they have done. Maybe it's a way that they treat all of you. You can tell that story. And then finally, what is your moment where you knew you were all in on Nu Skin? You'll hear those stories all throughout this event. Make sure that you find your own. Okay, now let's move briefly to crafting this story. It's very simple. I mentioned earlier that a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't want you to think about it that way anymore. From now on, all your stories follow this framework. Normal, explosion, new normal. What was life? What was it before this product, this success, this company? Explosion is a decision that changed when life became different. And then finally, the new normal is what is possible now. What is your life now? Or someone you know, if you're telling someone else's story, what is their life now? So for example, look at this guy. He is not happy. Right? He never gets recognized at his work. He wants to make an investment in his health, but he wants to make sure he's using top-of-the-line products. I mean, it is just, things are going downhill for this guy. And then he found you. And now look at him. He's so happy. What a happy guy. He gets recognized. He just walked across the stage earlier today as a diamond, right? Okay? He knows that he's making an amazing investment in his health, in his financial future. He has a whole team of people that he brought here today. He feels so good that he spent way too much money on an old pink horse toy that he bought off of eBay, okay? But that is how good he feels. This is the format that your stories need to take. Make sure to start them at the beginning, the normal, before everything changed. That's where the co-creative process happens. Finally, you have to tell the story. Now there are so many options for places where you can be telling your story. You can do it digitally, online, social media, and certainly you can do this in person, whether you're meeting someone for the very first time, to tell them that one story. Choose one product story and keep it tight, keep it short, to bring them in, to build that relationship. Humans build relationships through the stories they tell. I've mentioned this before, you can tell someone else's story. If you're here for the first time and you think, I haven't done enough, I haven't experienced enough, I don't have a story I can tell, borrow one of the stories that you heard on this stage here today or yesterday or tomorrow. Tell that story forward as you continue to build your own. And for all of my leaders in here, who in here, where are my leaders in here? Yes, I heard it. I hear it. Here they're coming. Give me a shout if you're one of my leaders and you're building a team. Yes? Teach your team through stories. Tell them the stories, the lessons you learned the hard way. Tell them their stories back to them, of their courage, of the strength that they had. Tell stories to your team. There's one final thing I want to leave you here with today, and that is the most important story of all. That is the story you tell yourself. All day, every day, we are telling ourselves stories about who we are, about what we are and are not capable of, and the problem is, those stories often aren't positive ones. They're stories that hold us back or make us feel less than. They keep us playing small. The good news is, you can choose to tell yourself better stories. Stories that inspire you, stories that move you forward. I was facing one of these challenges for a long time. I didn't mention this, so I love doing this, and I have 2 kids. My son is 13. He's the sweetest boy you'll ever meet, and then I have my daughter. My daughter is almost 12, and she is beautiful, has this long, flowing hair. I call her a force of nature, and my mother calls her karma. It is proving it to be true. And for a long time, I told myself that my love for the work that I do meant that I must in some way be failing my children. I spent too much time thinking about this passion. Can I pursue both at once? These stories were holding me back. Anytime I would doubt myself in my business, I would say, maybe I should just focus more on being a mother. Do any of you mothers, do I have any mothers in this room? Yes. Have you ever felt that mom guilt? Yes. And then one day I decided to look for a good story, a better story, and I found one. It was when my daughter was about 3 years old. We were in her bedroom. It was all very pink. And we were building something with blocks on her bedroom floor. And she looked at me and said, Mama, we are building a castle, which was helpful because I had no idea what we were building. And it was clear I was supposed to know what we were building, right? Okay? And then she looked at me again and said, and we live in this castle, Mama, because we are 2 princesses, right? And to be seen as a princess by your daughter, that's a pretty special thing, right? And then she looked at me one more time, and her eyes narrowed, and she said, and it's a big castle, Mama, because we are 2 princesses who go to work. Right? Where are my working princesses in this room here today? Yes, we are 2 princesses who pursue our passion, and I knew in that moment that maybe all the stories I was telling myself that I was failing my children by pursuing another passion were wrong. That maybe by pursuing this passion, I was teaching my children to dream bigger. And that is a story I'm very okay with. So choose the stories you tell yourself very carefully. And only choose the good ones. My friends, we've been through a lot here together today. You now know why storytelling works, a story clarification, and some specific strategies for you to tell your stories. It is my hope that this is just the beginning of your story journey. That no matter what wide hallways you walk down, no matter who is at your side, no matter the castles that you're building, that you continue to dream big. Have your voice be heard and go all in because you choose to tell your story. Thank you so much.